Today, we're talking with someone who stands on both sides of a deeply meaningful line. She's a school principal who works closely with students with autism and a grandmother who loves her own grandchild on the spectrum. She understands both the professional and personal sides, and for families, she's a bridge to stronger, more compassionate communication with grandparents. She's here to help grandparents find the right words without guilt, without fear, and with plenty of love. Jennifer Kaufman is the author of Grandparenting on the Spectrum, a journey from both sides of the desk. Jennifer, it's great to have you on the show today.
Thank you for such a lovely introduction. It's great to be
Yes.
here.
So thrilled to have you. And Jennifer, you run a school as principal, and you're also a grandma, and you train first responders in addition to that, and you wrote a book. I mean, I feel like the list goes on and on with all of your accomplishments. So what's the thread that ties all of that together, and why is autism advocacy so central to your life's work?
So, as you mentioned, my grandson is 8 years old. He has autism, and I am also the principal at a school for students with autism. So I do this for all of them. And I think that awareness in our community on how to best support people with autism and people who are neurodiverse is just, it's sort of my heart's work. It's really what I do.
Yeah, and you get to see autism from two very different angles, which I think is so unique, from the principal's desk and the grandparents' kitchen table. So how are those perspectives different, and how do they actually make each other stronger?
So, it's interesting because professionally, I sort of thought I was the expert on autism. But then when it came to being a grandma, that was a completely different rule book. In fact, I had to throw out the principal rule book, and I really had to approach it a little differently and put grandma first and shift my expectations. Because even as a grandma, I had ideas of what that was going to look like. But once I realized that there was a diagnosis of autism, I had to shift my expectations, and I had to shift the way we approach things in our family.
Yeah, and you said it's a different rule book for grandma. So what's something you had to learn or maybe even unlearn as a grandmother to a grandchild on the spectrum?
So, I might be a school principal for kids with autism, but all grandparents are sort of come into this thinking they're the experts because they've raised their adult children, right? And now their adult children have children. And I had to realize that I really was not the expert in this case. In this case, my daughter and her husband were really the experts on what it was and what it was going to take to support my grandson, Ben.
Wow. And I mean, you're making sure that everyone has an understanding about this. I want you to tell us about first response autism. Why did you feel it was important to help train law enforcement and first responders on autism awareness? And what's kind of changed because of these trainings?
Well, here in New Jersey, we refer to the Jersey Shore, and we like to go down the shore and go to the beach. And I would go to the beach with my grandson, and I had happened to see a child who was lost and watch the police officers try to communicate with him. And I realized that the child was on the spectrum. He most likely had autism. He wasn't able to communicate, and he was trying to wander away. And I realized that these officers really needed some support as to how to best address the needs of a person with different abilities and who might communicate differently. And so I approached the town at that point, and they welcomed me in to train their officers, and it just sort of went from there. Now we're training first responders, we're training college campus security teams, and really having an effect, I would like to think,
I
on
think
what's
that's
going on out there.
Yeah, I think that's amazing that you kind of recognize something and like, hey, how can I help out the situation? I think it's great that you've been able to do that and encourage some change there. What would you say
Yeah.
is the number one thing you'd say to a grandparent or even a family member who's just starting this journey?
I would say let your adult child set the lead. Really listen to what it is they need in terms of support. It might just be, instead of saying like, what can I do? Can I help? Maybe saying, let me babysit and you go out to dinner and you like offer the support, offer very specific support, and let them have that time to just be together without their child.
Yeah.
And then you get to benefit from the whole babysitting thing, which is
I
always a nice bonus.
I love that, offering specific support instead of them having to try to figure out what to ask you to do, just kind of going right in and saying, hey, I got this, I can do this for you. Jennifer, it has
Yeah.
been a pleasure having you on the show, and thank you for all of the work that you are encouraging to our viewers. A well-informed grandparent can be a game changer for the whole family. You can get Jennifer's free guide that can help by heading to grandparentingonthespectrum.com. First Response Autism helps train law enforcement and first responders to recognize, communicate, and de-escalate encounters with individuals with autism. You can find out more by heading to firstresponseautism.com.